Welcome to Before You Read, the series in which I tell you whether or not a book is worth reading. Today we'll be looking at the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. I've made a criteria in each chapter judging the book, and at the end I'm going to give the book a score and answer whether or not you should read it. Chapter 1, the most interesting ideas. The first lesson I learned from this book was to use small wins as a beginner. As a beginner, we have very little momentum at the start, and it's very easy to quit when learning a new skill in this sensitive time at the start. The difference between the people who stick through the growing pains of learning a new skill and those who don't is that they reward themselves with small wins and have more positive self-talk. If you don't encourage a skill enough at the start, you won't stick with it long enough for a time where you will eventually get a lot better. And then after this beginner phase is done, then you can focus on getting more feedback and reiterating and improving from this feedback. Lesson 2, Angela describes practical steps on how to deliberately practice. And she's given 4 steps. Step 1, have a clearly defined stretch goal. This means a very clearly defined goal just outside of your ability. So it challenges you enough so you're not just coasting, but it has enough interest in it that you're not giving up immediately because it's just out of your reach. Step 2, full focus and attention when you're practicing this skill. So that means putting on a timer and removing all distractions. Step 3, immediate and informative feedback. So after you're done attempting your new skill, now you need to get feedback immediately once you've done it. And that can come in various different forms. Step 4, repetition with refinement. And this is where you take in your feedback and make iterations from it and keep repeating that process over and over again. The third lesson I learned was about learned helplessness. I learned that it isn't suffering that leads to helplessness. It's suffering you think you can't control that leads to actual helplessness. Angela describes an experiment where a group of dogs were given an electric shock at random and nothing they did could stop the shock, compared to another group where the dogs could press a panel in the cage that would shorten the shock. After this experiment, the dogs were put in a cage with a gate just low enough for them to jump out. After this, a loud alarm went off. The dogs who were in the group where they could shorten the shocks previously consistently jumped over the gate, whereas the other group of dogs would whimper and lay down. It's a cruel experiment, I know, but it teaches us something. That if you have the belief that you can't help your situation, that attitude seeps into all other aspects of your life, even in situations where you do have faculty over that. Chapter 2, practicality of this book. I really wish there were more practical steps given in this book. I felt like a lot of it was just studies of grit being studied in individuals. I wish there was more clear-cut sentences on this is how you develop grit, and these are the practical steps how to develop that. Chapter 3, Waffle. There were a lot of times in this book when I was reading it, there would be a story that I've read somewhere else in a different book, or even examples that are used in other books. And it honestly got quite repetitive. Also, Angela would describe stories of famous actors, famous athletes, which are already well-known stories. So again, it just felt like fluff that didn't need to be there. Chapter 3, do you need to read the whole book? No, I don't think so. I think you could get away with only reading part 2 of this book, which is titled Growing Grit from the Inside Out, which focuses on the actual practical steps that you can implement to have more grit in your life. Part 1 is more about what grit is and why it matters, which honestly I think you can skip. Same with part 3, which is about growing grit outside in, but personally I didn't find this part that helpful. So we come to the end where I'm going to give this book a Hamza score. Yes, thank you Doug DeMuro for giving me the idea of naming a score after myself. I think there were some really valuable and important lessons from this book. And reading it would always make me feel motivated and go home and want to work hard and have more grit in the things I do. So I really liked that aspect of reading the book. I personally learned that I needed to be more deliberate in my practice and have directed goals each session of work that I was doing, as well as getting more feedback for the work that I do and implementing those improvements. What held this book back was just how much fluff was in the book. So many times I would feel like Angela was repeating her point and just arguing the same concept of why is grit important. And to be honest, if I'm reading a book about grit, I already understand that it's important. I'm reading it because I want to have more grit and learn how to do that. So the final Hamza score that I'm going to give to this book is a 6.5 out of 10, which I think is a solid book and I think it's worth a read. Guys, if you like this video and content about books, please let me know and check out this video here where I do a tier list of almost 40 different self-improvement books. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember, chase your fears, otherwise they'll end up chasing you. See you there.